So I would like to welcome all of you, I think, for this very timely and important discussion on rethinking India's Taiwan policy and prospects for deepening the India-Taiwan cooperation. And I would like to thank Usana's Foundation and Mr. Abhinav Pandya, who's really encouraged me and also been very supportive for me to have this conference, to organize, to get together everything. And I would like to thank the foundation for all the support that we've had. And I think personally, I've been researching and writing on India-Taiwan relations for almost a decade now, and I understand why it is important for India and Taiwan to work together. And for this, it is very imperative for academicians, policymakers on both sides to actually change their thinking and approach towards each other. It has been 25 years of this informal relationship. And I think through this roundtable, what we are trying to do is that we're trying to find out what happened in these 25 years and what can happen in the coming years and how we can make it better together. We have some eminent scholars from both India and Taiwan who are going to talk about this. But my request will also be towards them if they can actually give us some recommendations on how to expand this relationship and also how India can reframe its policy towards Taiwan, even though we follow the One China policy. And we have amongst us Professor Fang Tianzi. He's the Deputy Director, Center for India Studies, National Tsinghua University. Dr. Chir Yung Ho, who's a researcher, National Policy Foundation, and spokesperson of the KMT. Dr. Roger Liu, Associate Professor at Flame University. Dr. Ming Shir Shan, he is a research fellow, Institute of National Defense and Security Research. Dr. Prashant Kumar Singh, who's an associate fellow with the IDSA. And Dr. Manoj Kumar, a research fellow at the Taiwan Next Gen Foundation. But before we jump to our panelists or before we start this event, I would like to invite Dr. Krishan Verma, who's a former Special Secretary to the Government of India, and he'll be giving us his opening remarks for our event. Mr. Krishnan Verma needs no introduction, but let me give a brief introduction of his work that he's been doing over the years. He's a former director, Aviation Research Center, and Special Secretary to the Government of India Cabinet Secretariat. And during his career spanning over 35 years, he's held several key appointments within the country and abroad. He's held sensitive assignments in the politically and socially fragile J&K and India's Northeast. I think we can learn a lot from his experience. So I would like to welcome Dr. Krishan Verma to say his opening speech. Welcome, sir.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much, Madam Saija. This was small correction. I have not yet attained the dizzying heights of being a doctor, though my two daughters have, and the family is full of doctors. I'm the illiterate one. I hope to make it one day. But thank you very much for this very kind introduction. And I would also join you in thanking Abhinav and the Usanas for inviting me to this very timely, as you rightly put, a very timely international discussion, roundtable discussion on rethinking India's policy towards Taiwan and prospects for deepening the Indo-Taiwan cooperation. It's really a privilege to be talking to all of you. I think it's a galaxy of people that have come together on this forum today. Let me start by saying that I would very much like to downplay the China factor as the compelling and underlying raison d'etre for a closer India-Taiwan relations and pursue the relationship on its own merits and complementarities in a host of spheres. We cannot ignore the strategic compulsion that is driving this relationship with renewed vigor, more so in the very recent past. Both India and Taiwan, geographically located on opposite extremities of China, have been facing unprecedented intimidation and coercion, aggressive behavior from a belligerent dragon, coincidentally beginning around the same time in April last year. It has blatantly and with impunity violated very painstakingly negotiated protocols, agreements, understandings, and intent for maintaining peace and tranquility on the India-China border. With massive deployment of troops and heavy armor in the vicinity of the LAC, transgressing into areas hitherto unoccupied, indulging in provocation and skirmishes, they risked a retaliation from the Indian side, which, had it occurred, would actually easily make this region as the most dangerous place on earth. Similarly, its increasingly hostile actions and continuing intimidation of Taiwan by military drills, live firing exercises, repeated violations of the air defense identification zone, so on and so forth, has appropriately been described by The Economist on its front cover in the April 30, May 1st edition as describing Taiwan and adjoining areas as the most dangerous place on earth. I think we can all see the congruity in these two events. The geographical centrality of India in the IOR and Taiwan on the Indo-Pacific region, and the role they can play in concert and in coordination with democracies of the world can usher in a new equilibrium, stability, and freedom of navigation in the global commons straddling these vital regions. An interesting new political dimension warranting a reappraisal of India-Taiwan policy and prospects thereof has come up just a few days ago, in fact, on May 17, in connection with the respective positions of a sensitive territorial issue of mutual interest. I'm talking here about Tibet. The Taiwanese foreign minister sent a congratulatory message to Penpa Shering on being democratically elected as Sikyong of the CTA. He noted, and I quote, "The result shows the world the Tibetans' unwavering commitment to building a free and democratic Tibet." He also commended the compassion and resilience of the Tibetan people to strive for the right of self-determination, and why democracy is a universal necessity. He added, "We firmly believe that Taiwan and Tibet are reliable partners, and we can work together to safeguard our shared values of democracy, freedom, and human rights." Referring to friendship, partnership on basis of mutual respect and equality, the statement goes on to say, "Under your leadership, I look forward for working with your administration to advance the close and friendly ties between Taiwan and Tibet." I quote, "For me, this is a very significant statement. Messages of support have come from the US State Department, from Japan, from the All Parliamentary Group, Support Group in Japan, from Australia, three members of the Quad, Canada, and several international bodies. These developments come in the wake of a burgeoning bilateral relationship, particularly since the Modi government took office in 2014 and President Tsai Ing-wen was elected head of government in 2016 and the NSP was announced. Owing to its potential for development, thereby providing economic and commercial opportunities for Taiwan too, it placed India among the top 18 countries for strengthening Taiwan's outreach, increased prosperity, stability, and economic trade and development beyond the immediate region. Many focus areas were identified: trade and investment, cooperation and S&T, student exchanges, language training, think tank collaborations, security and intelligence tie-ups, health sector, tourism, just to name a few. These were all earmarked. For me, technological cooperation is at the heart of the bilateral relationship, more so in the light of the aggressive and assertive stances taken by the PRC during the pandemic. In my opinion, semiconductor manufacturing, artificial intelligence, robotics, digital surveillance, counter-hacking operations, must become the focus of the bilateral interactions at the appropriate levels. We need to take advantage of the 4-point consensus reached in the Quad Summit on March 12, 2021, where emerging technologies, resilient global supply chains were stated to form the enduring basis and bedrock of a very crucial and critical relationship. Let me not take more time on my introductory remarks. Abhinav, I congratulate you for putting together a more excellent and a very competent, knowledgeable panel to discuss the topic today in the backdrop of developments I have just related. The important presence of a distinguished panelist from the KMT is expected to bring about a bipartisan viewpoint from the Taiwanese side on the future trajectory of India-Taiwan relations. With these few remarks, I hand it back over to you, to Abhinav and Ms. Sija to take forward this interesting talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. I think your remarks have set the stage for us to take this event. Before we start with the event, I would like to invite Mr. Abhinav Pandya to say a few words before we formally start the event.
Good morning, everyone. And first of all, I would like to thank all our esteemed panelists and participants for joining us today. And thank you, Krishan Barma sir, for joining us. Thank you, Vasan sir. I would like to thank the special representative from the Kuomintang for joining us today. And Namrata, thanks to you for just, helping us organize this wonderful event. We have been planning this for a very long time. I guess last year, sometime around July or August, but it was just, getting dragged and prolonged for some of the other reason. But finally, we are back here, and I'm really excited about this event. And sir, Verma sir, I certainly agree with you that this relation should be pursued on its own merits. It has much of its own inner strength, and its strength lies in our common and shared democratic traditions and the faith in a multicultural world order, a liberal world order, faith in freedom of seas, faith in a democratic system. So it's our inherent strengths are those. But certainly, I guess, with this, we should also be mindful of the fact that we are facing, or not just we, I would say humanity is faced with an adversary which is totalitarian in its approach, which is expansionist, and which poses an existential threat to the entire humanity with its all kinds of umpteen number of experiments with biowarfare, with its expansionist aggressive policies in oceans and seas, and they are tampering with your internal systems, creating fifth columns in your country, buying your politicians, buying your media houses, buying your civil society. So that's a big adversary. And I guess this is the time when we should stop it. The entire world community should come and stop it. And Taiwan and India have a great role to play because we are facing the real brunt of this aggression, especially the physical aggression over the last 1 year and even maybe even before that. Okay. So this is the time where Taiwan and India should make the entire world realize the intensity, the gravity of this threat. Taiwan and India can also make the Western world realize that they have to set their priorities right. Americans, I would like to address Americans, especially at this time. Russia is not the priority. Your priority is South China Sea. Your priority is China and its aggressive actions. And if this threat is not nipped in the bud right now, it can just assume very dangerous proportions, I would say, in the future that can be very problematic for the entire humanity. And one more thing, I mean, just before I end, that the most interestingly, China's, this aggressive China's strength lies in creating psychological operations, information warfare, and just ruining the country systems from within. But when it comes to real fighting, the real conventional combat, we really doubt their capabilities. So I guess the world has to decide how to counter these, venomous forces, how to counter these aggressive forces. And today we are here not just to celebrate India-Taiwan bonding and India-Taiwan relationship, but also to come out with some very strong recommendations for our respective governments to chart out a future trajectory. Thank you so much. And Namrata, now I think I'll just hand it over to you. You can start with the speakers. Yeah.
Thank you, Abhinav. I think before we start, I just want to acknowledge a few people who have joined us. First, I think I like to acknowledge Professor Mumin Chan, who's the Deputy Ambassador of the Taiwan Embassy here in New Delhi. He's currently in Taipei. He just left India, so he's with us. And then Commodore Wasan is with us. Welcome, sir. And we have Mr. Pankaj Madan from the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung. Welcome, sir. And we also have quite a few people from the Taiwan Embassy, so I would like to acknowledge all of you for taking out the time for attending this event. We also have Vice Admiral Muralidharan with us, and we also have people from the Japanese Embassy. So thank you all, because having all of you, I think, would make this conference a success. With all your questions and your comments, we will have a comprehensive chart out for maybe our next event. So I think I'll start with my first question. I'll welcome all the participants. Thank you for coming and taking out the time for this. So the first question that in this roundtable, because this is a very informal setup, we are going to have rather a discussion rather instead of presentations. So the first question, especially, I would like to address to all our panelists, because I think that's something that we really want to have from this conference, something very important. So what do you think, in the current geopolitical scenario, how can India adjust its one China policy to accommodate Taiwan? And why has it become necessary for India to do so? Has the time come to stop looking at Taiwan through a Chinese prism for the Indian policymakers? I would start with Professor Fang. He can, give his comments, and then we can go one by one to all our panelists, and they can give their views on this question. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Namata. My great pleasure and my honor to attend this event, and thanks the invitation of the foundation, and it's also very happy to see many friends online, and like Mumin, Roger, Pashan, Professor Sun, and Dr. He. Okay. I think I want to share some observation about the current Indian Taiwan relations. May I share my PPT PowerPoint? Just wait.
Enough, can we have the PowerPoint, please? Just give 2 minutes, sir. Yes.
Or share, or I can do from my side. Okay. Sorry, some temporary. Taiwan and India have set up the official office in each other capital in 1995. And since then, I think the bilateral relation have gradually widened. And we also see many agreements signed during this period. Just like Shri Varma just mentioned. Next, please. During the new southbound policy, actually, I think India and Taiwan have signed at least 9 agreements, including air service, agriculture, even this very interesting mountain railway heritage. So you can see we have tried to expand our cooperation. Next, please. Next one, please. Thank you. But I think just like the Namata and the Mr. Rama just mentioned, I think still lots potential for both sides to realize. Because India and Taiwan share similar value, similar goal, interest, and concern. So my opinion is so-called IT, the Indian-Taiwan partnership is highly possible. But so far, we also seen the bilateral relations are mainly marked by non-political engagement. I think we maybe to reconsider this situation. And my suggestion is a more comprehensive and more ambitious and official scheme is needed to tap the potentials. Next, please. So I think there are two main areas for future cooperation. One is the traditional or maybe the military security issue. I will leave this part to Professor Sen. I see he is expert on this area. And the other thing I think we should focus on, just like Mr. Varma
ஏம்மா
have,
நல்லா கிரைண்ட் பண்ண மாட்டியா
sorry, yeah, just like Mr. Varma has mentioned, I think we also should focus on some non-material security issue, from health, economy to education. Next, please. On traditional security, I think so far actually there were no serious dispute between two sides, and both sides share common security concern and interest in. Particularly, I will say, we all care about an assertive and rising China. So I think both sides can share experience and knowledge on this issue, how to deal with an assertive China. Maybe we can I think one thing we have done is to promote the Mandarin Chinese language education, so we can help each other to understand China directly, not only via the second source like English media. Then I will also suggest we should have more interaction and cooperation between the China study group or strategy community of both sides. I remember many years ago, we have the IDSA NCCU roundtable conference, and I remember that time this conference actually bring many scholars from both sides together and to know each other. So I think something like the trade 2 or even trade 1.5 diplomacy is particularly important since Taiwan and India don't have the so-called diplomatic relations. So I will suggest something like this event should be held more often in the future. Second, next please. And then for the the non-traditional security, I totally agree the theme of today's conference. We need to think about Indian-Taiwan relation also from so-called beyond the third-party factor. No matter it's China or US or Japan, we should to look at the bilateral relation for mutual concern and the mutual interest. I mean, for the bilateral interest. For example, I will suggest we should have some kind of so-called paradigm shift from China only to China concern only to we should focus more and promote health cooperation, economy, and education area. Next, please. And the first one is health. I think we will agree now today the COVID-19 issue is very important for the world. And Taiwan is eager to work with India on this issue. And recently, I think Namatra have helped us also on this issue. Some Taiwan NGO actually have tried to promote medical material like oxygen concentrators to India, but the problem is they find it's very difficult to know the procedure and to find a reliable counterpart. So I think we still lack some kind of bilateral framework on this issue. Second, next, please. Then, of course, is economy. Between 1995 when we set up office till last year, the bilateral trade has grown more than 5 times. But if we see actually last year, the trade volume declined by 17%, and the bilateral value has been in decline since 2018. So despite we have the comprehensive economic interest, I think the economic exchange is still relatively small. Last year, the share of Taiwan trade with India is only 0.76 of its global trade. Next, please. This is a figure. I just skip this one. Next one. And our investment in India is also relatively quite small. Give you a number. By now, I think we have around 140 Taiwanese companies in India. But in comparison, we have maybe the 100,000 Taiwanese company in mainland China and 25,000 in the ASEAN states. Our investment in Cambodia even larger than the one in India. I don't think it makes sense. Next one. So I think we have a very promising percent, but now it's become also very uncertain. Taiwanese interest in India is increasing due to like India have a huge market, and also because of the U.S. China-U.S. trade war, and also the global supply chain reformulation. But recently, we also see some Taiwanese interest is affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, because you know some company already recall their personnel in India. So I think in the future they will consider their investment in India very, how to say, more cautiously or more seriously. But I think one way could restore this kind of confidence. For example, if we can have like ECA, which is Taiwan is keen to do. I acknowledge that recently India just tried to restore free trade talk with the EU. So maybe it's also a good time, just like Lamatra mentioned. Maybe this is just a good time. We also to restore the talk on ECA. Then also they can restore Taiwan business confidence in Indian market. Next, please. And the third part is education. I think Taiwan have the many some of the speaker today and some of the already visit Taiwan, and we are proud. We have a quite how to say, the qualified and a good quality education system, and we welcome Indian students to Taiwan to study. Next, please. And we can see this figure. Actually, the number student in Taiwan, the number of students in Taiwan is increasing. And before the pandemic, we saw that around nearly 3,000 Indian students study in Taiwan now. But of course, if we will compare to the Indian population, the figure is still relatively small. Next one. Next, please. This is another figure. You can see this is increasing, but it also interesting is actually half of the students in Taiwan, they are pursuing non-degree program. That means they just visit Taiwan for a short term, maybe like 3 months or 4 months, or maybe for internship. Next. On education area, I think Taiwan have provide many initiatives like Taiwan Scholarship, Mandarin Chinese Language Scholarship, and even some university, they also have performed their own they have their own scholarship program. And we also have the Taiwan Fellowship Program. Next, please. And we also say, so far we have 9 so-called Taiwan Education Center in India. This is also like promote the Indian Taiwan education exchange, and also like the mentioned earlier, the Mandarin Chinese language program. Yes. So I will on this part I will explain. Maybe we also, I think we will be happy if we can see Indian government or Indian society also have some initiative on this kind of things. So it will become the bilateral things. Yes. Then we understand that Indian government still follow so-called One China policy, even he not mentioned it in public. And some officials are very cautious of developing political relations with Taiwan. So far we don't see, I think we lack the so-called high-level exchange. And so far we have only a 5 minister level economic consultation. And I think that's not enough. And India has not allowed its union minister to visit Taiwan because of some concern. I also think this should be changed. Yes. Next, please. So I suggest, my humble suggestion, I think both sides should consider upgrading the official dialogue to minister level at least, and regular comprehensive dialogue. I think it may be possible. We know that if Indian government, you even have this kind of dialogue with Pakistan before, so why now it's Taiwan, right? If you also you can have this kind of dialogue with your neighbors, I think there's no problem for you to have with your partner, some country like Taiwan. So I think I suggest not only on economic dialogue, we should maybe can have the comprehensive dialogue and including the health, culture, education, then we can have more cooperation. And also, I think this suggestion is made by Namatra. Um, we Taiwan already sent military attaché in Delhi. I think we will welcome if Indian government also consider to send some military personnel in Taipei, because then they can have the more cooperation on this issue. But I left this to Professor Shen. Maybe he can have more idea on this. Next, please. Then, so my suggestion is just like the thing of today conference, we should not just look at the Indian Taiwan relation under the so-called Indian-China relation or Indian-China time framework. We should get out of this box. So I think we should focus on so-called ICT. Meaning India should see Taiwan and Taiwan should see India. So people and government in both countries should see each other as partner, and then both sides could work together. So this is my some opinion, and thank you for listening. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for a very comprehensive presentation, and which have actually raised quite a few questions. I already have a list of questions towards you. I think we'll take it gradually. But you talked about a paradigm shift, and I think I will like to have Dr. Prashant here, because we have him from the Indian side, and he's been following the India-Taiwan relations for a really long time. And now Professor Fang here talked about a paradigm shift, and he also talked about to dehyphenate the relationship, India-Taiwan relations, and we should not have China in between. Why do you think the Indian government is still hesitant? We all understand there is a difference between the One China policy and One China principle. We have countries across the globe, following the One China policy, and you have US, Europe, and other countries that are actually formulating a relationship with Taiwan acknowledging the one China policy, but giving a lot of leverage when it comes to their relationship with Taiwan. So how do you think India can actually move ahead in this scenario? Dr. Prashant. I think you're on mute, Dr. Prashant. If you can unmute yourself.
Thank you, Dr. Namita, for inviting me. And thanks, Dr. Abhinav Pandya, who is my old friend, and we have got reconnected here after full 15 years. And I extend my welcome and good morning to my all friends from Taipei, old friends. And this is indeed a very, very good initiative that now we are discussing India-Taiwan relations. And discussions are not centered only in Delhi, but across the country. And this is also now we have had some meetings in Chennai. We have now this is from Dr. Abhinav is conducting this from Udaipur, and other places have also held meetings on India-Taiwan relations. So this is also a positive development in India-Taiwan relations, as it shows that the awareness about this unique relationship is spreading, and more and more and more voices, diverse plural voices, and support from more stakeholders is powering in for this relationship. My senior Dr. Fang, Dr. Mumin Chan, Shriming Chan have been following India-Taiwan relations for last 20 years. I also started working on this unique relationship around 10 years ago and immediately joined Namita. So on the basis of my long association with this involvement in India-Taiwan studies and my association with friends, I would say that India-Taiwan relations have indeed made some notable development. Two things I would like to say. First is this, that comfort level has surely increased. Now, of course, we still feel self-constrained and shackled when it comes to dealings with Taiwan. But if we look at that, how relations has progressed in last 10 or 12 years, so there is no denying that the comfort level and confidence level has certainly increased. And number two, this point about dehyphenation. So let me assure you that, of course, there are some geopolitical, geostrategic considerations and our concerns about China. But our support, India's support for one China policy is different now, is different from what it used to be in 1950s or maybe early 60s. 1950s, basically, when the support for one China policy was a kind of sacrosanct support, a sort of ideological support, and a support to China against China's one China policy as a response to larger Western imperial politics as we used to understand in these terms then. And but now this support is not that kind of value-based normative support. This is a support of just because of strategic expediency. In our minds, we do not bother about one China policy now, but this is an expedient issue only. So that way, having said that, I would say that if you in last 10 years or so, we see that this dehyphenation has already happened at a mental level. A cerebral dehyphenation has happened. Dehyphenation has happened in our minds. We are very well aware that Taiwan is not adjunct to China. And we do not think that way either. And of course, we use different kind of terminologies because still things are evolving. Our relations with China are keep fluctuating. Our relations with wider East Asian world, and of course with Taiwan, are in the process of recalibration. So that kind of, and because of that, inconsistency will be there. I am not saying, because whether we call it in official parlance Chinese Taipei, Taiwan, so and how when we deal with Taiwan in different formats, so how to deal with it, so that all sort of linguistic complications come up. So, but even then, I would say that those are not that great irritants for us now, and in our mind we are clear that Taiwan is a separate entity. We call it, some of us call it country, some of us call to see no relation whatsoever with China. Some of us want to play safe and just a neutral word entity, which has no meaning actually. But now the consensus is, take it from me, that the point of dehyphenation in our mind is complete. But how to do it in the practical realm? The question Namrata raised. The question she raised in the beginning, that what we think, what do you think about what India can do to adjust one China policy and accommodate Taiwan? So my point is this: India has been pushing the envelope, though slowly, and it should keep pushing the envelope. And practically, we can make it the whole thing of this business of one China redundant in practical terms. Of course, I will not take any very provocative position. We don't have to deal. We don't have to indulge in adventures, which is not good for neither for India nor for Taiwan. But as much as we can do, we should do to push the envelope and to make this whole business of one China redundant. And mind you, see, India was one of the first country that switched recognition from ROC to PRC. And India perhaps is the first country again, I think in 2010, when it basically clearly and gave a clear message by dropping this reaffirmation and pledges for the support for one China policy from the joint communiques with China. And since then, China has made so many attempts to bring this reaffirmation in the joint communiques, but India hasn't agreed. And this changed position has been widely noted in the world. And maybe if you see, this is very tentative thought. Don't take it. This is not a citable thought, but a very tentative thought. If we look at this U.S.-Taiwan relations during the Trump period. So for that period, I say that perhaps this Taiwan-US relations are moving beyond post TRA relations. Now they are in the post TRA relations. So effectively, what they are doing, if we look at Trump's moves, they are not denouncing TRA. They are not reversing their official positions, but they are making them defeat. But the moves they have taken basically suggest they are making this whole one China policy thing defunct. And the kind of responses we have seen from Australia and some European countries. So the line is basically what we have taken, that practically dilute this one China policy thing. But what is the future? That I cannot predict. How long, how far this understanding will go, that at present I cannot predict. But that is the direction in which we should move. That is my point. That make this thing defunct. And the point is about one China, the difference between one China policy and one China principle. See, in the Indian context, it didn't never matter, because the stakes were not so high, the interest was not so deep. So practically, it was basically one China policy, and we never our support for one China policy, and there was no talk about the difference between the one China policy or one China principle. Yeah, but practically, we dealt with one China policy, not with the one China principle as such. But this can be interpreted in any way, because and the other side of this, the way for 50 years Indians supported one China policy in a rigid manner, so that was a support for one China principle itself. But the moves we have taken 2010 onwards, so now we can interpret, the official position is not that, we can interpret that we have got no commitment for one China principle, but we are supporting one China policy under certain circumstances and considerations, which I have explained how those considerations are getting diluted. Now the point about the new framework. Professor Fang has himself has given a new framework. We have so far talked of, particularly in terms of security cooperation and the cooperation for somewhat political nature, that so far we have segregated relations in terms of cultural relations, social relations, and health cooperation, etc. But let's now start saying that give us this framework of new NTS, new traditional security for our wider political and security cooperation for cooperation. And if we can move if we can move towards propagating that framework, so that itself will be a kind of new framework. Of course, it will be not overarching framework, but in a segment of security and politics, it will be a new framework. If we talk, if we bring all these things from health cooperation to economic cooperation and other cooperation, and we start redefining. Of course, this is a slow process, intellectual process. It takes time to flesh out. But if we start doing this within the new, this non-traditional security framework, so that will be a step forward in giving a new framework. Because now we are not talking of, when we discuss security, we don't talk security with Taiwan. We don't discuss security with Taiwan. That some scholars may discuss, but not think tanks are also not discussing security with Taiwan as that on that scale as they should be. Of course, governments are not. But if we bring this idea of this, if we make this idea of non-traditional security cooperation in India-Taiwan relations as a mainstream idea, so that will be one step forward in the trajectory of the India-Taiwan relations, and one new push for the relationship. Because once we start talking of new traditional, non-traditional security, so in that context, we can see Fangtian sir has indicated about the traditional security issues also, but that I think from Indian point of view that might not be feasible in the near future. But if we start with non-traditional security, then we have some space for cooperating and discussing some softer, some simple issues pertaining to traditional security of, say, military exchanges, military student exchanges, and giving more space to Taiwan in the 1.5 discussion forums in India, even track 1 forums in India. So we have to go in that direction now. We have done enough work in culture. We have done enough work in education, as seen in the statistics shown by Fangtian sir, and we have done work in other areas also. So, and we have done enough work in our public diplomacy, that we are that the number of participants in India-Taiwan discussions and debates is increasing rapidly. So that all shows this, and partly that credit goes to the tremendous work done by our Taiwanese friends, academic friends, civil society friends. But now, if we want to take this relationship a little forward, so we have to really bring this, bring India-Taiwan relations in security discourse. So how to take in that direction? Of course, non-traditional security discussions on non-traditional security issues, and is the way forward. Namrata's idea, which has been endorsed by Professor Fangtian about military attaché, is a good idea. My own take is that maybe we cannot, India perhaps maybe feel hesitant to send a serving military official as military attaché. So it can send some retired official, of some high-ranking retired official as a military attaché. The beginning should be made. That is the point. We can push this idea. So, and the point is that what more suggestions we can give now. So first, all said and done, we have to take care of the state of bilateral economic relations. Unless you develop a strong economic muscle, we will not have the strong base. All this talks about security cooperation, non-traditional security cooperation, traditional security cooperation, and some increasing consultative space on political and strategic issues, geopolitical engagement will not sustain. Because when money changes mind, when there is enough money in relations, So then we will. So our elites also now. So we are just scholars. We are just deliberating and thinking. If we are able to develop strong economic muscles, then some real stakeholders from business world, business community will also get involved, and that is the point when the changes in government approach towards Taiwan will get accelerate. So that we have to take care of. And a specific point, I would say that public diplomacy had done good work in last 10 years or so. It is doing good work. But now the time for the scholars is to take more and more joint studies. Some studies could be related to economic issues. Some studies could be related to other issues related to public exchanges, and some studies could be some wild card studies also. Which may not attract and find support from the government, but as intellectuals and as scholars, we have to keep our backup plans ready, and we can indulge in some intellectuating and some hypothesizing that how to push some concrete form of security cooperation between India Taiwan, some concrete shape of India Taiwan political cooperation, and of course with reference to China. So that kind of studies, maybe we cannot receive the support from the governments, but think tankers can do. So now we have to move beyond this deliberation discussion oriented think tank events. We have to focus more now on joint studies, and we have to focus on them publicizing well. And I think these are some points and observations which I would like to offer in response to Dr. Namrata's question, and the very, very useful points raised by and points made by my senior Dr. Fang Tian, and some of my own suggestions. And if I have any other questions for me, I would address them in the question answer session. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Prashant. I think very, very important points you've made here. We have like 3 eminent speakers from Taiwan. I thought I'll bring them in first, but because you've raised some questions, we have Dr. Manoj here. Now, you've spoken about important point, which I have been also kind of thinking for a long time. When it comes to India-Taiwan relations, we have a top-to-bottom approach. Whatever decisions are made is made at the top in Indian government. Now, I've been thinking for a long time, how can we explore this concept when it comes, because you've spoken about think tanks, how think tanks can take initiative. But how about a bottom to top approach? How about more people in India knowing about Taiwan, and more people in Taiwan knowing about India? Having spent quite a few years in Taiwan, I have realized that both our countries, though really want to work with each other, but when it comes to people interactions, we really have we have done very little when it comes to people interaction. And I think when we have this bottom to top approach, I think maybe it's a crazy idea, but when more people in India are aware of Taiwan, when more people in Taiwan are aware of India, I think especially in India, I think the government will definitely take note of Taiwan. And here, I think I'll bring in Dr. Manoj, who's been staying in Taiwan for, I think, 5 or 6 years, and who's been going to schools in Taiwan and teaching schools in Taiwan, all the students in Taiwan about Indian culture. So, Dr. Manoj, what do you think? Is this bottom to top approach, how useful will it be when it comes to India-Taiwan relations? Because we have seen government always kind of, they have their restrictions, they need to go through a process. But how about creating more awareness about Taiwan in India and about India in Taiwan? What would you like to say? How do you think that paradigm or that thing will work when it comes to India-Taiwan relations? Dr. Manoj, please, if you could come in.
Thank you, Ms. Namrata, for having me here, and thank you to Usansas, Mr. Pandya, and all my seniors, Professor Fang, Professor Chen, and everyone here. And it's my pleasure to be here. And as we are talking about India-Taiwan relations in this thing, since I came to Taiwan for first as an exchange student in 2015, and then I did my PhD here since 2016, I realized that as a student of IR, I also more interested into culture studies. I realized that there is a significant gap in understanding what India is or what Taiwan is in India and what India is in Taiwan. And for this, I already I try to. I was at first there was some kind of cultural issues, cultural differences, and I realized that we can always talk, but the work is at the ground is also as important as we are talking in such platforms. So one of the major challenges when I started going to schools around Taiwan, I realized that the students in Taiwan, of course, they know a lot about other countries, for example, US or European countries. There is very lack of, I would say, there's some point missing about India, such a huge country nearby. And given Taiwan is focusing on southbound countries and southbound country people themselves are here in Taiwan. So I would reckon Professor Fang's mentioned about in his slide TEEP, Taiwan Education Exchange Program. That's an excellent program where it brings foreigners to the schools of Taiwan in rural areas, and it is by Ministry of Education of Taiwan, which brings people to such a ground level and help all the foreigners, not only in India, but to understand, to give a world perspective to the Taiwanese students, which goes beyond the books. Uh, and again, some of the books that I reckon with on the education that students read about India, I think that needs to be updated as well. And my own experiences going around different schools, I realized that I myself don't know about India a lot, because some of those questions that I face from the students are quite challenging to me, and I try to get back to them after I finish. But yes, this bottom to top approach is, I think, I've been doing this for a while now, and I'll try my best as well. And from the Indian side, I think there is a big gap of knowing what Taiwan is. Maybe in the cities, people know what, when we buy a HTC phone or an Asus laptop, we know that this is a product from Taiwan. Now we have Foxconn investing in. But again, as a general, among the students, among the scholars, or in a general public, there is a big gap of doing this. So I think as an Indian person in Taiwan, or maybe some point of time when I go back to India, one of my major work, if I go back to India, would be to let in academia, to let people to know what Taiwan is, what are the challenges of Taiwan, how Taiwan was formed, what is Formosa, and how it's geographically significant in in the greater Indo-Pacific perspective. And then again, from my point of view, beyond this education and the scholarly level, I think we can, where India and Taiwan can match would be things like smart city policies, where Indian cities have done a lot of MOUs with countries like Singapore and Japan, different cities, and Europe, where they kind of cooperate on doing this smart cities, where this is where Indian cities or the Indian states can come in, such as city diplomacy. I think this is one of the big thing that both sides can work on. And also about the Chinese language. As per the last the education policy of India, Indian government removed Chinese language as a kind of a learning school in the CBSE affiliated schools. But this is where I think Taiwan can fit in India as well. Even now they have 9 schools, 9 to 11 schools around India, which from where I was also one of the student. I think that's an excellent initiative that Taiwan government has done, and also it has to be expanded not only in major cities but also at the tier 2 and tier 3 cities, where if we reach to the ground, definitely there will be a big push at the government to government level or at the official level. Yes, and again, the recent COVID cases that has been occurring now, Taiwan has seen a surge. I think one more thing where India and Taiwan can participate would be on pharmaceuticals or the biopharma industries, which probably there is some cooperation, but not enough as we see the trade data, it is only 0.17% of India's total trade with Taiwan. And these are the things where India has some strong points and where Taiwan has also have the vast R&D that the both sides can coordinate and cooperate more, and it can go beyond, as my seniors like Professor Fang and Professor Singh have said, that we have to also focus on track 1.5, track 2 tier diplomacy. This is where I think both India and Taiwan do have strong points, but they have not done enough on it. I think this is where we can work on it. I will let, if there's any other questions, I'll definitely happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Manoj. I think very important points raised there that we need to, there's more to understand about Taiwan in India and about India in Taiwan. And I think we should, have more exchange programs where we can do such things. I mean, I know Taiwan has a lot of programs where they're inviting people from India and of course other countries to do it, but we should have an exchange where India and Taiwan can have a mutual exchange where Taiwanese students can come to India and Indian students can actually go to Taiwan. Because when I was in Taiwan, I observed that a lot of South Korean students and Japanese students actually do that they have exchange programs and they come to each other's countries and they learn about each other. I think very important point there by Dr. Manoj. Professor Roger, I'd like you to come in here because you have been working in Flame University in Pune and you've witnessed quite a lot of educational exchanges that we have had. But do you think a time has come where we have saturated these exchanges when it comes to education and maybe a trade, and we need to move beyond this in India-Taiwan relations? Or do you think we still need to work on these and then probably have a strong base, because we are still lacking in many things when it comes to cultural exchanges, economic exchanges, educational exchanges? Do you still think we need to build on these to actually have an India-Taiwan strategic relation?
Well, thank you for naming me. Well, you kind of caught me off guard because I thought I'm going to talk about U.S.-Taiwan relations in the Quad context. But for this one, I will say that the educational exchange is very important. And for all this year, I've been staying in India. Actually, I've been doing some of these programs. Well, in 2017, we hosted an exchange program for Taiwanese students along with National Tsinghua University from Dr. Fang. We invite like 16 students to come from Taiwan to have some immersion programs in India in Jindal Global University. And students learn a lot by programs like that. Actually, they realize the fundamental difference between India and Taiwan, because they are something that you have to experience to learn that they are so different. And of course there are others, and you can see at the same time a lot of higher institutions are beginning their collaborations at different levels. As I know, Jindal, my former boss institutions, actually they've been doing a lot of exchange with Taiwanese institutions. And in Flame, the place I'm working now, we have signed an MOU with not only the Institute of South Asian Studies of National Zhengzhi University to initiate a lot of exchange, like workshop, like mutual publication and others. Also, we have signed an MOU with Taiwan Asia Exchange Foundation. So in the future, we may have some, collaborative research projects all together. So I think these are very important. But I would like to echo Manoj and other panelists that, well, the core thing of having this kind of exchange programs or initiatives is to enhance the mutual understanding of especially the young generations of the two countries. And I see this will take time, all right? So this is like a generational work, which is very important. That's fundamental. That's something that well, the Taiwanese people like to talk about KPI. They want to see, well, when I do A, I will see B, all right, in a very quick manner. But there are some foundational works that, needs to be done by people with enthusiasm, like Namrata and like all our panelists here, especially to enhance the understanding of the younger generations between the two countries. All right. As Taiwanese and I've been staying in India for this is my 6th year. Here I can see that there are too many stereotypes between people from each other, right? If you watch the news in Taiwan, you will see that what they focus on is how badly the government of India has been handling the COVID-19 situation. Well, partly it's true, but it was presented in a in a stereotype manner that, well, it's like, well, people have a specific perspective to see India, all right? And they have some kind of maybe wrong recognition of India. And when people talk about India, they have come up with impressions. And I think this is something that we have to kind of change. And all this change can only be done by more collaborative and more exchange between especially the young generation. And at the same time, I've been talking about this. I think the most important purpose of new southbound policy that has been initiated by the government is not only diplomacy, all right? The core thing is about the Taiwanese themselves. They should be able to, through this opportunity and channels, they should be able to review, all right, their relations and their roles in the East Asian or Indo-Pacific community, right? Who are Taiwanese and what kind of role that they are going to play in the community comprised of different countries? Well, for a long time, the Taiwanese are just looking for the United States, Japan, European countries, and that's all, right? And how are we going to place ourselves vis-a-vis or in the context of other countries like the South Asian countries, right? And the South Asia countries especially. How are we going to collaborate with people from different nations, and what else we can do? And how are we going to deal with and make friends with these people without too much strategic concerns or calculations? Like my previous panelist has been talking about, is way too much important than others. So I think I will stop here for a while. If you want me to talk about US, the Quads thing, you can bring back. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Roger. I think we'll be discussing about the Indo-Pacific definitely, because we also have Professor Shan here. And my inbox is full of messages about the Indo-Pacific and about the security cooperation between India and Taiwan. And I will try and kind of address all the questions that we have here in my inbox. But before, actually reading all the questions, I would like Professor Shan to come in here and actually talk about, we have discussed quite, economic relations, education, and other cooperations. But please, when you come in, please also highlight how India and Taiwan can actually have cooperation when it comes to security, when you talk about Indo-Pacific, and how can that be done? Because there's a very specific, I think, question from Vice Admiral Muralidharan. He says that apart from the areas of cooperation suggested, we would look at a logistic support agreement and encourage port visits, cooperation in assistance and disaster relief initially. And this, of course, would be keeping in with our vision of Indo-Pacific as one entity. But how do you see, actually, do you see with the current political scenario and the geopolitics, you see how India and Taiwan can actually move ahead in this direction, and how Taiwan actually sees the Indo-Pacific strategy? Professor Shan, you'll have to unmute yourself.
Okay, that we can see from the dialogue room that you are talking about how to deter China or make China uncomfortable. In the first question, we're talking about India. How can India adjust one China policy? I think this idea is connected to that how to increase or improve the security cooperation between Taiwan and India. Because if India one China policy not change, we cannot talk about more about the security cooperation. I'm not sure that whether India really has a one China policy, but it is obviously that India is very concerned and sensitive about China's attitude and reaction in its Taiwan policy. In other words, even if there is no one China policy of India, but India's Taiwan policy is similar to that other countries that have a one China policy. And when the United States, Japan, and Australia are discussing to adjust the one China policy, it will also push India to change the existing one China policy or its Taiwan policy in the future. You can see that Biden administration asked Japan to make a Taiwan Relation Act, Japan's Taiwan Relation Act. I don't know that the U.S. Asked India to adjust your one China policy or not, but if India wants to strengthen your cooperative relation with Taiwan, the one China policy will become a major obstacle. The Indian side should know that the adjustment of one China policy is not to establish diplomatic relation with Taiwan, just to give Taiwan a normal treatment. In the past, India discussed Taiwan from a Chinese prison as part of the China issue. But now, it should treat Taiwan as a major player in the Indo-Pacific region. India can learn the lesson from the U.S. one China policy change, and only by giving treatment to normal country, to Taiwan, can promote the mutual benefit between Taiwan and India. And let's talk about the security cooperation between Taiwan and India. I read many articles talking about this. I think in terms of the current situation of Indo-Pacific strategy, enhancing India-Taiwan cooperation is not only beneficial to India-Taiwan bilateral relation, but also have many benefits to Indo-Pacific country or global country. As far as India is concerned, and certainly hope to have more trade and investment and high-tech cooperation from Taiwan, such as semiconductor, because Taiwan's export-oriented economic development experience will help India's current economic development. We also see that this situation is continuing to develop. However, under the Indo-Pacific Strategy Framework, economic, trade, cultural exchange are still not enough, because if China rises to demand the global order, it will become a disaster of the Indo-Pacific country and the world. Therefore, under the Indo-Pacific Strategy Framework, it's necessary for Taiwan and India to strengthen cooperation in security. In the future, I think Taiwan and India can promote such as security cooperation. For example, PLA military intelligence, and national defense technology, and military Chinese language or military Mandarin course, exchange of combat training experience, because Taiwan and India, some weapon system is the same, such as Apache helicopter. And we can also host a regular maritime security exercise, such as the United States now already start the maritime or Coast Guard patrol or training exercise with Taiwan. Also, we can see that border conflict between the Sino India uses many special force or special troop to layer. So we can also cooperate in the special operation force in disaster training. And Taiwan in the United States has begun this kind of training, especially a military academy student and the professor or teacher exchange is very good, and national defense think tanks is also not enough. So they are all good development direction. Prashant talking about many track 1.5 exchange, but Professor Fang Tianshi mentioned about several years ago, IDSA have a strategic dialogue with NCCU. Right now, Taiwan already have our own think tank organized by our MND. If someday IDSA can cooperate with the INDSR, Taiwan Defense Think Tank from MND, I think it's very good improvement between the India-Taiwan cooperation, security cooperation. Although some have already started, but the progress is limited. If the current favorable situation can be used to expand and deepen the cooperation exchange between Taiwan and India, it will have major strategic implication to the Indo-Pacific country. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think you've made some very important points. A lot of people wanted to ask all these questions from you. But now I'll move to Dr. Ho. I would like to ask you, sir, what are the areas that you think in which India and Taiwan can cooperate? And, what should be the mechanism that will actually boost this relationship? Because it's been 25 years, and of course, we have made immense progress, but I still feel that there is quite a lot of room and quite a lot of things that we can do more. So what are your views?
Thank you, Martin. Yeah, now my name is come back. See, I have my name on my little cell. Before I start my comment, I want to ask all of you a question. That is, why do you think that India should or need to support Taiwan? Why? Because of our shared values? Strategic consideration? Or more exchanges? That's a question we have to think about that, and then we move on to talking about why we have more, engagement. So think about, more than 100 years ago, Dr. Sun Yat-sen, the founding father of the Republic of China, now, aka Taiwan, he proposed a pan-Asianism, which meant the Asian countries have to get rid of the Western imperialism, right? So I think the Republic of China has the same situation that the India faced 100 years ago. Even now, we are facing the same problem. And we understand that India always has kept the position of its non-aligned policy. So likewise, in Taiwan, we still, hold hedging gain, the equal distance from major powers in the global. So I think that we have so much common ground, not mention the historical and cultural connection since a century ago. Think about Buddhism. We have a lot of Buddhism delivered in Chinese or in Taiwanese society. So for me, as the opposition party in Taiwan, the Kuomintang, now try to deepen the connection between Taiwan and India, given the reason I just talked about. We share the same historical and the cultural common ground, as well as shared values. The strategic consideration is more hard for us. I try to use some softer way to make this connection. So, for example, I know that there are many Twitter users in India, right? You have a large part of population using Twitter. So what we can do is, as a opposition party, we don't have power to implement policy, something like a new southbound policy. That is the ruling party in government can do. But we try to make the connection more clear, make the connection more stronger. So we try to tweet it in Hindi. Believe it or not, we did several times. This is not this is the way other political parties in Taiwan never did before. So, and it's received very well, and we got the media coverage in Taiwan too, and we see a lot of feedback from our Indian friends on Twitter. So in return, you know what? Let me see. Yeah, what do we tweet? We say, okay. On Double Tenth Day, the Taiwan's National Day, we refer to India on Twitter, saying Hindi Taiwanese. How to pronounce it? By right? It means body, right? If I pronounce it wrong, please correct me. And those retweets were reported throughout the Taiwanese media outlets. So, and we also try to film a video featuring how Indian immigrants in Taiwan lives, how they study, how they lead their life here, and what their suggestion to the government, what the Taiwanese government can do for these new immigrants. So that is more growth rooted, and that is what we want to make a deep connection instead of talking about very rigid strategy things. Again, back to the India one China policy we just talked about. I think what we need from India government is, and from India friends, is to support Taiwan, please. Maybe not politically, but help us to participate in international society meaningfully. For example, both countries now facing COVID-19 situation, right? And Taiwan had just an outbreak of the disease. We are so nervous about this, and but we know that we need some friend in the community, global community, that can support us. That's more important to talk about Taiwan in terms of Quad talk, or what is it? The Asian India strategy. We need something real, just like the famous slogan from Coca-Cola 50 years ago. It's a real thing. We need real things. So, and we also hope that Taiwan is not seen as a card against China. I mean, People's Republic, because from our perspective, only the peaceful development across Taiwan Strait can safeguard our safety instead of the tension, because we are not, the Taiwan is not far away from mainland China. So we need a more soft power, more connection, more human things. So that's what I suggest, and I'm working hard to make a connection with the people of India and the government of India. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think on the sidelines, we are having a very healthy discussion between Professor Shan and all our other participants. They have been writing to each other, answering questions on the Indo-Pacific and the Quad, and which is very, very nice. Roger, I would like you to come in here because I think all the participants somehow have touched upon the Indo-Pacific and also about, they've spoken about the security cooperation. So what do you think, how we can actually fit in Taiwan in this Indo-Pacific strategy?
Well, people are talking about this because, well, I think one key connection that we can talk about is the real strengthened relationship between U.S. and Taiwan in recent years, as most of us can observe. So, well, there is we can observe that there is a consensus formed among different parties from different sides of the political spectrum in the U.S. Well, even the Democrats has took office, and Joe Biden administration, although a lot of people are suspicious about their intentions to fight against China, well, but for now we can see that this kind of structure has been formed. Although there are some, well, that's between U.S. and China. So the competition has been formed, and I don't think I mean, in the coming short time that it can be changed. And the other another bilateral relationship that we should look at is the U.S.-India relations. The U.S.-India relations, well, before Biden administration took office, a lot of people are suspicious about this as well because, well, first, the two governments are coming from different spectrums, right? And in March, actually, there are some small diplomatic brouhahas between U.S. and India regarding the Greg Thunberg issue, the Mina Harris issue, and all the other environmentalists protesting and joining the farmers' protest around Delhi. But I think now the U.S. administration has learned to separate the security collaborations with the different political stance between the two governments. So this kind of mechanism has been established, and we can see that Jake Sullivan has been communicating really well with his Indian counterpart, Ajit Doval. And India has been embedded into the Quad more seriously than before, especially if we look at the new Biden administration as actually not hindered this kind of participations by the speed. Because, well, Quad is actually beyond 4 participants. Quad is far beyond the US-India relations. Quad actually creates a platform that will enable different players from different areas of the world to collaborate against the rising China. So we will see that within the Quad framework, India has formed small triangular relations with countries like Japan and France and UK. And we see a lot of European countries joining and get into the Indo-Pacific area through Quad. And this is a great mechanism or sub-mechanism being brought in by Quad because this will help New Delhi, the strategic makers, the strategic planners of New Delhi, to kind of, we can still kind of adhere to the long tradition of non-alignment movement if there is still one, and the strategic autonomy that has been haunting the South Bloc for decades. Well, if there are still people suspicious about that, we can still bypass that through the collaboration with the outside powers like French, like UK, and others, right? So with this all together, well, India and Taiwan actually have been brought up by this Quad mechanism altogether, with the strengthening U.S.-Taiwan relations and the strengthening participation of India into the Quad. Actually, India and Taiwan has been brought together within this framework. So just like Professor Shen has been mentioning that, well, it actually provides a lot of opportunity for India and Taiwan to work together. One thing is that, well, the two countries are using, well, as India is using more and more weapons platform from the US, actually, logistically, Taiwan and India can work together, right? And there are other needs like the intelligence need for the Indian towards POA and China, and Taiwan can help a lot, right? Because of the language, because of the long traditions of China studies that Taiwan has been engaging. That, well, all these properties or capabilities that Taiwan has been had can help India in a long way and in many important aspects. So I would say that I myself is optimistic about the India and Taiwan collaboration in security aspect through the Quad. And for others, well, and another thing that I would like to mention is that, well, regarding to some non-traditional security or non-traditional, other aspects of collaboration, Taiwan and India can also benefit from the growing Quad mechanism. One is the GCTF, the Global Collaboration Forum that has been initiated by Japan and the United States for many years. Well, India can join that actually, because the reason one that Taiwan and US had is about the collaboration in vaccination. All right, US has again strengthened its support of the current Taiwan administration through the provision of vaccines. And I think, well, India can, well, we can view this as an opportunity to invite India to participate in that, because that will help to reduce India's suspicion and, fear to deal with Taiwan directly and bilaterally. If India can collaborate with Taiwan in the multilateral mechanism like GCTF, I think, well, this will increase the incentives for the strategic planners in South Bloc. So I will stop here and we can talk about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. I think one maybe suggestion from my side, because we have Mr. Huang here from the Central News Agency. We have Charles here from the Central News Agency. We also have Indian journalists covering this, today's program. I think what is more important is a collaboration also between Indian media houses, Indian journalists, and Taiwan journalists, because that awareness about each other countries is very important. And I think that is one of the points also where we are lagging behind, because our media houses, our journalists don't know each other. They don't have that kind of an interaction that our journalists have with other countries. So, writing stories about Taiwan or writing stories about India or India-Taiwan relations or the larger geopolitical concept that is there, I think next event probably the foundation Abhinav can have is a collaboration between Indian and Taiwanese journalists. We can bring them together on this platform and we can have a discussion, which I think will definitely benefit India and Taiwan, because I think Dr. Ho and Dr. Manoj have also, and I've also spoken about the people-to-people connect, how important it is, because we are definitely discussing a lot about the Indo-Pacific strategy, about the One China policy, but I feel that awareness is very important about each other, so that from there we can of course move ahead. Now there's another very important question that I would ask, really ask my Taiwanese panelists to answer. Maybe they can start from Professor Fang and they can go one by one. The question has come in that a new administration has taken office in Dharamshala. How does Taipei see this development? I know it is not related to India Taiwan and definitely does not fit in our framework, but this question I think is very important and I've been asked to address this question. So I'll start with Professor Fang. What are your views, sir?
Namrita, if I may,
Yes.
just before Dr. Fang starts, in my introductory remarks, I think I had made a mention of this. I think it's one of the most significant developments that have taken place.
Yes.
And when you're doing a reappraisal of India-Taiwan relations, I think there is some, I don't think there is a cooperation, but there's a congruence of some views that have to be sorted out in this. So I think it's a very important question, and I would really request an answer to this. Thank you.
Fang, if you could.
Okay. Thank you, Namata. And I personally have many Tibetan friends staying in Dharamsala. So I think the society in Taiwan, we share the same feeling of Tibetans, their suffering. But I think our government is very cautious. Okay, because of some concern. One example is we saw the news report. His Holiness Dalai Lama, His Holiness is willing to visit Taiwan in certain time, but I think he still not get a official invitation from our government, and because there's some concern here, but I do believe the people and our society we share the same sympathy to Tibetan. So I will suggest actually we should also develop some kind of people-to-people connection. Okay, actually we have provided some like a scholarship also to Tibetan in India, and I think we also can still follow something like this one because I guess our friend in Dharamsala they also need a program like the capacity building and also the human resource development. That's also quite important. And another area interesting is also related to the Chinese language. I know some Tibetan they also have sense the need to learn Mandarin Chinese due to different reasons. And earlier, our students they visit Dharamsala to do the volunteer teaching. So this kind of thing, I think we should keep going, and this might be also good for middle side. And I agree, we also need to very seriously consider so-called, sorry, maybe sort of, but after the so-called post-Dalai Lama area, I think many things will happen because Beijing maybe try to play the game of recognition to appoint his favorites. So how Indian society and how the Indian government to deal with this kind of situation, I think this is also some kind of concern. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Professor Shan, would you like to say something about it? Professor Shan? You are on mute, sir.
Okay. Yes, because my background, I focus on the traditional security cooperation, but in my personal experience, I think people to people not only focus on trade or on, for example, I have many friends. I know this Indian friend from maybe from 10 years ago. Even Prashant, when Prashant visit Taiwan, I invite him to my dinner. I see him in the National Library. I give him many help. I think this is people to people connection. but we are all in the circle of security. So we're not only talking about the personal issue, we can also talk about traditional security issue. So if we can improve or increase that people-to-people connection, especially in strategic or security circle or community, is another way to improve the security cooperation, is my point.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Ho, would you like to come and comment on this question?
Me?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
cool. I totally agree with both Dr. Fang and Dr. Shen. For example, the Chinese language program is Taiwan's strength, and it absolutely an attraction to foreigners who want to further understand or know the Chinese. I just want to make a clarification that if we keep use the China-Taiwan dichotomy, it would be leading to a mistake that Taiwan is not, the Chinese society. Actually, because you all visit Taiwan and stay here for a while or years, you will totally understand that if you want to know authentic Chinese culture, please come to Taiwan, because here is not communist society. Right? I just catch the slogan from the American United Airlines magazine, which introduced Taiwan as where you can learn authentic Chinese culture. So that is the softened thing we can keep to make the exchange more interesting. And of course, the India is a powerhouse, political or potential economically in the years to come. So I think that those exchange programs may help Taiwanese to know further the India friends. For example, we do have some business that find a basis in India, and Taiwan is developing electricity, automobile industrial, and which India can be a good place to help Taiwan with sufficient labor force, or and the place, right? But we need to know with each other more. So we need keeping our exchange programs. And the language culture is the very easy way to give access to both nations. So I think that is the way we have to keep. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Professor Roger, would you like to come in here on the Tibet issue and give your remarks?
Well, let's see. Let me turn on the mic. Tibetan issue, I'm not very into it, so I will spare the part. But well, I think people-to-people relations is very important, as we have been talking about. So all this the Chinese language exchanges, well, actually, this is something that we should be doing. But I think Taiwan has more other than the Chinese language to offer. And there's like a paradox that whenever Taiwan is walking out and say, well, we can teach you Chinese. Well, this is a good thing actually, because the Mandarin Chinese actually is good. But the following question is usually like, well, after learning that, can we go to China? And well, actually, I think as the Taiwanese side been offering the Mandarin Chinese education to all those who are interested in learning more about China or the Indo-Pacific situation. we still have to think about, other than the Chinese, what else we can offer, right? Because think about Singapore. Singapore has been, well, Singapore is also a Chinese society, right? But it's very hard to imagine that when they approach India, they will say, well, come to Singapore, you will learn Chinese, right? I think Taiwan can also emulate Singapore's model to offer more things. Well, for example, Singapore is very good at business model designing, all right? So they actually has designed a lot of industrial park, and they create a lot of business opportunities for people who want to do business in India. They facilitate many things, all right? So it's like a one window thing. If you want to do business in India, you can actually do it through Singaporeans because they have facilitated many things. And I think there are a lot of know-hows or many other things. For example, democracy, right? The democratic practice, the Taiwanese can also collaborate with the Indian friends, right? Because we would like to say that we are both democracies. But the democracy is being done here in India and back in Taiwan actually is very different. And how can we, build a bridge between either the academic communities or ordinary people through democracy and through some commonalities is something that we can also think about. So I think I will stop here. Thanks.
Thank you, Roger. And I think there's a very important question from the Taiwanese side to Dr. Prashant, Dr. Manoj, and I think, but I'll start with Verma sir, because he is so experienced. He's been in the government for a long time. I think I'll first start with him, this question, and then we can go to Dr. Prashant and Dr. Manoj. The question is it possible to increase the Taiwan military attaché here? Because right now we have only one Taiwanese military attaché to TECC here. Do you think it is possible that we can have one from the army, one from the navy, and one from the air force, like Taiwanese attachés posted here? What do you think, sir? Do you think it's possible?
Thankfully, I'm out of government on this one, so I wouldn't want to give you. No, let's go step by step. Having people posted in one or the other place and be given official positions can be very advantageous in a certain circumstance, but could also be counterproductive in the kind of the phased growth or improvement of the relationship that is required to be done. There is enough happening on the unofficial side. We are aware very much about the tie-ups that we've had in the military side. I think all of you here present on this panel would know what has happened in the Navy, what has happened in the Air Force, what has happened in the Army, what has happened in intelligence cooperation, what else is on the anvil for development in various areas. So I wouldn't, spend too much time in worrying about symbols of posts and official contacts. I think the most important thing and the thread that has come out of this discussion, and I think it's a very valuable discussion, and full marks to you, Namrata, for steering it in the way you did. It's coming out is that we need more people-to-people contact. We need more understanding between the societies in India and in Taiwan. We need to be able to find various ways to develop our relationship right across the board. It's a full spectrum kind of an exposure coming in, whether you're talking about tourism, whether you're talking about Bollywood. We haven't even touched that. I think it's a huge thing when you talked about media. That's the place we should be looking at. Can we do something in that area? Can we do something in trade investment? Of course we can. I am one force for technological cooperation. There's a huge area of interest there. How do we, at the same time, we have to understand the concerns of the Taiwanese side in this. Most of the people in Taiwan, I've just been there maybe half a dozen times on visits, official and unofficial, was basically, they don't know India very well. They have a different view about India. So this has to be strengthened. It can happen through various ways. And that is, of course, we talked about media, we talked about Bollywood, we talked about student exchanges, a host of things that we need to do in this area. Maybe we can think of creating some sort of an ecosystem in this country where the Taiwanese can come and feel at home, feel part of their culture, feel part of their their schools, their medical facility, their language, they feel something more comfortable, like a Chinatown in some part of the world, where they can come in and then they start mixing and mingling with society in India, understand the richness. I think what we need to actually take advantage from is the commonality of the shared values, which was referred to and it's alluded to time and again in this panel. Was what are the shared values? We have democracy as a strength. Let's look at that, and let's not keep looking over our shoulders at the mainland, because that becomes an episodic relationship. Oh, we have a problem with China, let's get together. That's not the way to look at this relationship. This relationship must have its own dynamics. It must have its own complementarity. And there's so many which have been talked about at this point of time. And we have so many other vehicles and platforms that can be used. Quad is an emerging platform which can be done. Look at the 4 points that were mentioned in the March 12th summit. You're talking about emerging technologies. Look at that commonality. You're looking at health. There we go. We're talking about resilient global supply chain. Taiwan and India are natural allies, if I may use a cliched word, but that's what it is. So let's focus on all those things rather than looking just purely at symbolic things, which will be actually just putting out a red rag to a bull, totally unnecessary, totally something that could follow. We're doing it in the informal level, at think tank levels. There's a lot of exchange going on. Let's continue with those. That's what my limited intervention at this point would be. Thank you. Thank you, Namrita, for asking me that question.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Prashant, would you like to comment on this question?
I agree with sir, what sir has just spoken more or less. I take that line only, that we have to move in a gradual manner, and we cannot be oblivious to the general strategic situation surrounding us. But for that, whether there should be more officials, whether India should send its attaché either from the serving officers or retired officers. So see, these are all valid points. So per se, there cannot be any objection to this, but the timing is the issue, and timing is the issue, and yeah, of course, basically timing is the issue in that we have to see when to do and how to do. So that's the point. But the larger thrust should be on developing a full spectrum relationship under which all these interactions also fall. That's my point. But I would like to take up one question which has been directed to me by Commodore R.S. Vasan. What more can be done to get Taiwan back in organizations, WHO? Basically, I think his question is what India can do. So I will say that formally again, there may be difficulties, but the point is we have to create an ecosystem. The word sir has just used, and we should employ the services of think tanks, civil society, and the media groups, and let them front the government and create this awareness about these issues in India, and let the voices come from the citizens and from the leading citizens of the country and leading non-governmental agencies. And we have to first make the country aware before taking any formal official positions. Formal official position on such issues will always take some time, and will follow. But the first we have to create a right and conducive environment for this, because lastly, how many now, due to the latest this episodes, some awareness has increased, but people are not generally aware in these issues, and we do not know how much stakes India, our people will feel that we have in all these affairs. First, we have to create an intellectual conditioning within the country for all those issues. So in that context, I would say that let's not rush. Let's not ask the government to rush to take position and position on these issues officially. First, create an ecosystem, right, conducive intellectual environment, a scholarly environment. First, let's be aware of these issues, make our people aware of these issues, and in that, the leading think tanks should take should take the leadership. And of course, now it's a good thing that in our national dailies like Indian Express, the Hindu, Times of India, they are writing editorials on those issues, and it's a very new thing in my memory. That, and it's a success of, I feel, that public diplomacy outreach by Taiwan also, if I may say so. So we have to invest first in that field. So I would say that as a think tankers, this is our first responsibility to take position on these issues. Government will follow later.
Thank you, Dr. Prashant. Dr. Manoj, would you like to give your comments on the question?
Thank you, everyone. And I would echo what Mr. Verma sir and Mr. Singh have also said this. And yes, it will always a good thing if we have a military attaché more than the traditional army 1 or 2 personnel. But again, at the same point of time, we will be limiting ourselves to some strategic issues itself. Our India-Taiwan relations is not only based on strategic issues, it should go beyond that. And I do also, because of my work here, I also like to promote cultural literacy, which always I have emphasized that we have to increase each other's knowledge on each other's place. Like one of the few things that I think both India and Taiwan could do is conducting, let's say, essay writing competitions among college and university level. Have as a think tank, we all are working in research centers, so we can have a mutual summer or winter internship, maybe where the scholars can go both sides during, let's say, on summer, or give opportunities to the students, the youth, to study this. And also one thing I have seen that yes, we do have Chinese language centers in Taiwan education centers in India, but there's a very lack of. Yes, India don't have a single national language, but as Hindi is mostly spoken, and Bollywood has been admired by so many Taiwanese, I think we also can probably look into establishing a Hindi learning center in somewhere in Taiwan. I think there are various push for Southeast Asian and South Asian language studies in Taiwan, but I see Hindi is, although it's not national language of India, but it's kind of missing the race in this part. I think few things can be focused on, and I would again emphasize cultural literacy is something I have learned more about Taiwan going around schools than sitting myself in Taipei all the time in all these 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Manoj. I think he made a very good point. Prashant sir wants to say something. Yeah.
See, I would like to add one more point, and taking of where Verma sir left, that if we read all the documents about Quad cooperation and Indo-Pacific cooperation, so there is ample space there and enough ingredient in those documents. We can call out elements of cooperation which India and Taiwan can have separately and bilaterally, and we can have a tailor-made scheme for this cooperation, compatible with and consistent with the larger Quad cooperation, etc. So point is this: we have to focus on strengthening the relationship, not that not the participating in the symbolic high tables. So first is that let's create the substance in relationship. That's my point. That's what I'd like to add, and that's how I would like to endorse Verma sir's point.
I think very important point there, Dr. Prashant, because that is what we all need. And I think it has been rightly pointed out by Ms. Priya, who's been staying in Taiwan for such a long time. She said, we need to make contacts at every level. First, of course, people to people, university to university, think tank to think tank, media to media, government to government, association to association, school to school, and party to party. So we need to set up communications, I think, at each level between India and Taiwan. And I think now we should kind of call it a day, because we've already extended the program with, I think, more than half an hour, and which shows, of course, that how intense and good the discussion was, but also I understand that everybody has other engagements. So I think we should call it a day.
Namrata, I'll just like to make a point, Namrata.
Sure. Please come in.
Yeah. I really appreciate this idea of student-to-student exchange programs, and sometime next year at our think tank, USANA's Foundation, we are already planning to start some kind of exposure, international student exposure program, basically inviting the international students and making them aware about India's security concerns. Maybe a field trip to Kashmir or northeastern states, Arunachal, and theoretical lectures for about 10 to 15 days, just making them aware with the Indian cultural part, philosophy, and our security issue. Okay. Sometime next year, and I guess, I'm really looking forward to if we can do something with Taiwan, and when students or PhD scholars, candidates can come and join us here. Really looking forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you, and I think it has been a wonderful session. I think all of you will agree with it, and I think let's make it just the beginning of many more such interactions between India and Taiwan. And thank you all, thank you everyone for coming, the participants, the speakers, the panelists. I would like to thank Abhinav for giving us the platform to discuss all these things, and I think it's extremely important. And we will continue with that. Maybe next we can, of course, have the journalists from both countries to come in, and we can have a discussion. And slowly, I think we can take to other levels. I think, so thank you, everyone. And I hope we meet soon, and we meet again on this platform and on other platforms to promote India-Taiwan relations. Thank you. Thank you.